Hi and welcome to this digital SLR tutorial. I'm going to be talking you through how to change the exposure on your camera using program mode. I'm using a Nikon D3500, but many of these settings are generic to all digital cameras, so it's just a case of applying these skills to your particular camera. In fact, I'd recommend watching this tutorial with your own camera and using it as we go through. So a few things to point out on the camera. We have the mode dial here. There are many automatic settings. Okay, so we have the flower, good for close-ups, the running person, good for freezing action. So there's lots of different things there which allow you to get automatic settings. You also have the auto button here as well, the auto function, and that will allow you to get the shot. But in many cases you want to have a bit more control, and this is how you do it. So we have M for manual, A for aperture, S for shutter speed, although it's TV on some cameras, so for time value, and P for program. So I'm going to turn this camera to P for program, which is a semi-automatic mode, but will give you complete control over your exposure too. The shutter release button is at the front here, and that will be important in a few moments. So I'm just going to flip this camera over so you can see a little bit more clearly on the screen on the back. So when you half press the shutter button, you'll find that it will bring up a reading. Okay, so let's bring up a reading. It's reading the light that's in front of it and giving us an exposure reading. Now on the left hand side here, in the top left, we have the shutter speed, and then here we have the aperture. On the top right we have the ISO, which is currently set to 200. So by turning the wheel, which is on the back of this camera here, and in your case it might be on the front, but you need to just double check to see which one works. By turning that wheel, you'll see that it does change the settings on the camera. So if we turn it to the left, it's changing both aperture and shutter speed. So left is slowing the speed down. So when it says dot dot, that means it's seconds, that's 1.3 seconds. And when we move up, when we lose that dot dot, we're moving into half a second and moving up to 1/5 and so on. So we're getting faster and faster. So it's keeping both in sync. So whenever you change that wheel, it's changing them both for you. So it's very useful. Gives you control over both things. So if you want to do some creative work with shutter speed, then you focus on your shutter speed, so slowing it down to get the blurring of motion, and speeding up to get freezing of motion. If you want to work with aperture, then you can use wider apertures like f4.8 to get shallow depth of field, or moving up to smaller apertures using the f-stop there, so we're moving it to the left now, to get a higher depth of field. So you can control it very, very simply and very, very easily. So it's just a case of focusing on one or the other depending on what thing you're doing, and it will keep them both in sync. Now in the situation where there's not enough light, so for example if I put my camera down so it blocks up the light, it does say that the subject is too dark. Okay, so it brings up a warning saying subject is too dark. Now you've got to watch out for that, so you will need to change the settings to help you. Now one thing that will help is by changing the ISO. So on this camera there's a button which says I, and that will allow us to change at the bottom, so the bottom left here, the ISO, so you can switch through them. So ISO is set to 200. On your camera the ISO might be a different button, so it's a case of just navigating and finding the right place for it. Okay, so very simple tutorial. I wish you the best of luck with your photographs. Thank you for watching.